who are joining me for this conversation. Joining me first is Kelly Lewis. Kelly is a professional school counselor who has worked with elementary aged children for 15 years. She earned her undergraduate degree from Converse College and she received her master's in counseling and development from Winthrop University. Right now, she's pursuing a second master's in educational leadership. And as a school counselor, Kelly has had the privilege of working with kids in kindergarten through fifth grades on a wide variety of topics. Many of them we'll talk about today. She's worked with kids on loss and grief, friendship, anxiety, family changes, and many other life skills. She is married to Houston, who she says is a saint, and that he's put up with her shenanigans for 10 years. And together they have three very sweet kids, 16-year-old Milan, 8-year-old Trey, and 6-year-old Morgan. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Charlotte Ponder and her mom, Elizabeth. Charlotte is a kindergartner at Charlotte Country Day School. She loves soccer, outer space, her friends, and jumping on the trampoline. It sounds like an awesome life. This is her first year being a part of our programming here at Children's Theater of Charlotte. And she says she's already a big fan of us, and we are definitely a big fan of hers. When Charlotte grows up, she would like to be an astronaut. That's awesome. Welcome, Charlotte. How are you?
Good.
Good. It's great to have you here. Mom Elizabeth is an attorney turned stay-at-home mom and of three kids, and she recently moved to Charlotte from the Asheville area. She's an avid runner and hiker and is always the happiest, she says, on the side of a mountain. We'll have to talk about that later, Elizabeth. This year of COVID, Elizabeth is also homeschooling her fourth grader. She was very involved in fundraising for various Asheville schools and nonprofits, and she's enjoying learning more about the new city that she calls home and the opportunities here. Elizabeth, welcome, my friend.
Thanks so much.
You are welcome. Thank you for being here. And rounding out the panel is Carly Spears. Carly is creatively navigating her way through her 7th year of teaching. She is currently teaching an energetic and loving group of third graders at University Park Creative Arts Elementary right here in CMS. And Carly's goal is each year is to foster a love of reading within each of her students that will last a lifetime. That is a lofty and admirable goal. Welcome, Carly.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You are more than welcome. So before we jump in, I just want to say that we are on Facebook Live, so please join us in conversation. The chat is open, so if there are things that you'd like to share, if you have thoughts on the conversation, thoughts on the clips that you might see, or if you have questions that you would like to pose to our panelists, please include them in the chat. We would love to get you in on this conversation. So everybody, before we get started, you guys all know this, I'm just gonna share it for the good of our virtual audience. We are gonna watch some clips of the show, and then we're gonna have some questions on the flip side. Again, hopefully we'll have a few questions from folks who are watching at home, alrighty? So let's go ahead and get started. We are gonna have my friend Alex play our first clip from the Velveteen Rabbit.
You can't keep pirating on an empty stomach.
Nana, we haven't even raided the ship yet.
Well, even pirates need to eat. And if you don't eat it now, it'll be cold.
Pirates don't mind cold food.
No, but families do.
Mother!
It's pirates today, is it?
A ship full of the king's gold is on the move. Rabbit is on lookout, see?
I do. May I come aboard? Telescope, please.
Pirates don't say please.
Well, mothers do. And pirates might not have to loot and steal if they had a few more manners. Hand it over. Oh, it looks to be quite a ways off yet. I think there's time for food. You want to make sure to have your strength for the sword fight to come!
wonderful scene of a mom playing pirates with her boy and with his stuffed bunny, a stuffed toy. Kelly, I want to talk to you first. Let's talk about how important it is for parents to encourage imagination and really to validate the thoughts and feelings of children around them. Is this something that you would encourage parents to do?
I totally would encourage it. Being imaginative and playing with toys and games and things like that, that's the language of kids. That is where they are. Um, and think about it, all our kids, all they want to do is play. So when we play with them, we are meeting them where they are, and we get a little glimpse into their world as well. Not to mention imagination. I mean, that leads to all kinds of things. I mean, we have a lot of the things that we have today because somebody was highly imaginative. So it's super important that we encourage that, and play along for a little while. Sometimes we just need to stop and meet them where they are and enjoy that time we have with them.
Yeah, wow, you made some really incredible points. It's true. Imagination is the mother, well, necessity is the mother of all invention, but imagination makes a lot of that happen, right?
Hmm.
So, is it harmful, would you say, when parents or other adults don't engage with kids in imaginative play?
Well, it can encourage kids to hide it, I guess, more so than anything. Kids are going to be who they are, and if they don't play with you, they'll play with somebody else. They have opportunities at school. I know it's different this school year, but in a lot of classrooms, play is encouraged through like free centers and those types of things. Kids will find ways to play, whether you play with them or whether they find ways to do it on their own. And so I would definitely highly encourage it, because again, it's where they are developmentally and it's most appropriate.
Indeed. Thank you so much for that. Elizabeth, I want to switch to you for a second as a parent. Do you engage in activity and play with imagination with Charlotte and with your other children?
Yeah, I do definitely. And Kelly was touching on this, but the good thing about children is that they're so naturally creative and naturally imaginative. Like half the battle is just giving them opportunities, and then you really don't have to work that hard, I feel like, to get them to do it. You know, if you can get them off the screens, if you can get them outside, then it's just amazing how much their brains naturally start creating and imagining and pretending. And so yeah, we try to do a lot of that. We hike a lot, find fairy houses on our hikes. We try to have a lot of art supplies around the house so that they're just there whenever they want to pick them up. And then we also, I think, try to really consume a lot of good, inspiring art. I know in the past year that's been a little bit harder, but you know, going to museums, going to plays, we love the children's theater so that they can see examples of creativity and you know what that looks like.
Absolutely. And you're right, it is definitely harder this year, but that's when we as adults have to try a little bit harder because if we think that we are having a tough time with everything that's happening, imagine how difficult that is for a child who's really trying to process but does not have the life experience to deal with things the same way that we as adults do. I also feel like as an adult, when you um, let your guard down and give yourself and your child some time to play, you'd be surprised by what that does for your own imagination and like lowering of your stress level, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys both so much. I want to go to another small clip now in this scene. And I just want to say that by this point in the story, the boy has really become attached to the rabbit. This is a toy that he's received for Christmas and didn't have any particularly strong feelings for. But after just a short time with this toy, he develops a really special bond. And we'll see that on display in this next clip. Alex, will you play that one for us?
Please? Nana, please go out and get him for me?
What's fuss and nonsense? Oh, for goodness sake, okay, all right. Oh. But mark my words. In the future, you'll have to do better to remember your own discarded friends. Instead of sending your poor nursemaid out to climb a tree in the middle of the night.
And Nana tromped into the garden to rescue the rabbit, for the boy would not be consoled without him. He was wet with dew and quite earthy from diving into the burrows the boy dug in the flower bed.
Your mother will have my head for letting you sleep with such a filthy thing. Fancy all that fuss and nonsense over a toy.
Give me my rabbit! Don't say that! He isn't a toy! He's real. He's real, I tell you!
Boy says. Charlotte, I have a question for you, my friend. Do you have a toy that you just love and you want to keep with you all the time?
Yes.
Do you mind telling us what that toy is? Do you mind sharing?
I have 3 that I sleep with.
Oh, okay. You have 3 that you sleep with. All right. So what if there's a night when you can't sleep with one of them, or like one maybe got left at a friend's house, or you can't find it in your house? What does that mean for you? Can you sleep? Can you sleep?
I would just ask my mom if she knows where it is, and if she said no, I would just sleep with the other 2.
You would just sleep with the other 2. Okay. What is it about your toys, those 3 toys, that you love so much?
I'm sorry, I don't think she got the last question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. What is it about those 3 toys that you love so much?
One of them, when I was born, my mom had it when she was in the hospital, and one of the others I got for my birthday, and the other one I got for Christmas.
So they're just special to you, is that right?
Yes.
I understand that. There's definitely things that I possess that are just objects, but well, to other people they might be just objects, but they're very special to me. Do they give you a certain feeling? Do they just do you feel a certain way when they're close to you?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, that's all right. I remember my favorite toy as a child. Earlier in this season, we ran a social media campaign about favorite toys as a child, and we were asked to submit pictures if we had them. And for me, it was like dolls. I just loved dolls, and I loved Barbies more than anything else, which are not super safe to sleep with. But I used to have my Barbies with me all the time, and I had a Barbie Dream House and the Barbie Corvette, and they just made me feel, I don't know, they made me feel excited every time I played with them. I would play from morning till night, like every single moment I had, I would play with those toys. I haven't kept any of them, but I definitely have lots of pictures of myself with toys. For the adults on this on the panel, do any of you remember your favorite toys? Anybody?
I had an American Girl doll I only had 2 brothers, so I had a sister when I had my doll, and
Yeah.
you couldn't tell me otherwise. She was a real breathing little sister to me, and I drug her around and I slept with her, and I still have her tucked away in my closet at home, and she's a little tattered, but she was loved very much.
That is very sweet that you still have her. And it's so interesting that you talk about her like she was your real breathing sister as far as you were concerned. And that regardless of like whether she was still new and shiny and her hair was all in the right place, you probably loved her all the more when she wasn't so perfect, right?
Absolutely.
That's interesting. So that's really a good segue into the next clip that we want to play. This one is about how even though the rabbit is becoming very worn, he's still very much real to the boy. Alex, let's go ahead and play that next clip.
As winter melted into spring, the Velveteen Rabbit was becoming more and more of what the rocking horse told him he would be.
Dirty and worn.
The pink rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him.
And the thread at his tail became unsewn and began to unravel.
We just need to bury this little rabbit so we can get back to the stream and pan for more gold.
His beautiful velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier.
And everywhere he became a bit loose in the joints.
Well, what are you doing there? You don't think I'm going to unload this treasure all by myself, do you? You're going to have to pull your weight, Rabbit. Do your fair share.
And moment by moment, with the love of the boy and the power of his imagination, the rabbit did as he asked and became what the boy had said he was. Real.
That's it. I knew you could do it. If you want to share in the treasure, it's only fair you do some of the work.
Alex, thank you so much. So, just as we were talking about right before the clip, the boy's toy is becoming worn. He's kissed off a lot of the pink from his nose, the velvet from his ears is starting to wear off. He's not new and shiny any longer. And as an adult, when things get like that, whether it's a favorite shirt that you like to wear or even a car, as adults, we get rid of those things, right? But for kids, that only makes them that much more real. Kelly, we talked about imagination at the top of the conversation. So I want to ask you, it's really easy for adults to brush off things like a doll or a stuffed animal becoming real in the mind of a child, or them having an imaginary friend as not being real. Can you talk a little bit about what psychology tells us is happening in a child's emotions when they have these really strong convictions about an inanimate object?
Well, I think it goes back to a comfort thing. Like inanimate objects can become like a part of the family if that's where they've been spending the most of their time in imaginative play. This is a part of my family now, and I want to be with them because they bring me comfort. The other piece of it, comfort is a lot of it. Connection to memories and special events, those types of things. Kids are when they have something that is super special to them, like you said, they are less likely to like discard them and put them away. They hang on to them forever. And again, they become like a part of the family, real or not. I like to compare it to our pets. There are some people who are not dog and cat people, and if anybody says, "Oh, my dog is my baby," well, it's a dog, and people are offended when you say things like that. It's kind of the same idea. Pets become a part of our family, and these play toys can do that for kids as well. Also, with toys that are well loved, it's a control thing. The one thing that kids have full control over is their imagination and what them and that toy can do together. Like they can go to the moon, they can shoot around the earth 3 times, and they can go to the ballet or wherever they want to go because the child has full control of the imagination. And so it just becomes a part of who they are for a while. And that's okay.
Yeah, wow, that's really beautiful the way that you put that. I had not really thought about it in that way, but it connects back to what Carly was saying about how she loved that one American Girl doll in such a way it became a part of her family. Yeah, she said that was her sister. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anything that anybody wants to add to what Kelly just said, just about your own personal experience? Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. Um, Leads us into our next question, and what happens when you have to be separated from something that you have come to love so much. Let's watch our next clip, Alex.
We have to make sure the pirates eat hot chocolate first, and then we'll bury the gold. Nana,
Yes, ma'am?
it's time to call for the doctor.
Is it that bad?
I'm afraid so. He's flushed, he's hot to the touch. There's a rash.
Oh, no need to say any more. I'll send for the doctor right away.
Thank you. He's been talking in his sleep. So much nonsense.
Sunset turned to night.
And still the boy's fever raged on.
Mother worried and paced.
And Nana made sure the cold cloths were ready for his forehead. What if he doesn't get better?
He will get better. He will.
Another day.
Another night.
The doctor came.
And the doctor went.
And days turned into weeks.
And no one knew if the boy would survive.
So I want to apologize for that abrupt turn into a much more somber part of the story. But that's life, right? Life is not always things that are fun and things that are easy to deal with. It's not always predictable. And that piece, the boy is sick for weeks, and his family really feels helpless. A lot like a lot of families are feeling these days, right? Carly, I want to turn to you for just a second. The imagination has real power. We've talked a lot about that in this conversation. And unfortunately, that power, the imagination, is not always positive. Sometimes it might be about a toy or an imaginary place that's magical, but sometimes it's about really difficult topics, even for adults, let alone for kids. What kinds of things do children imagine that can lead to fear and anxiety, especially at a time like now, when many people they know may be sick or just with circumstances being so abnormal right now? What kinds of things might children be imagining that are not positive?
There's a lot of fear of the unknown right now for children. Um, a lot of sadness as well, because on one hand, they're thinking back and reminiscing to what school used to look like. And they used to be able to, play on the playground and just talk 3 feet from somebody, not 6 feet from somebody, eat lunch together. And now, at least my students are staring at a screen all day. So they're lacking that personal connection. But on the other hand, when they go too far forward, they get anxious about the future because they don't know what's next and they don't know what next week's going to hold. And we keep making these plans and the plans keep changing. And so they're beginning to wonder, like, will school ever be the same? Will I ever get to see my friends again in person? Do I have to wear a mask the rest of my life? And the constant change in plans is causing a lot of anxiety. That would cause anyone anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you seen those feelings of fear or anxiety play out in kids in your class?
I have, and we've had a strong push for social emotional learning. Last year, thankfully, we started it last year and it rolled over into this year. So we have daily morning meetings when the kids can just talk. And those morning meetings aren't academic based. So it's important to remember that they're students, yes, but they're kids first. And they need that space to talk to one another, because if we don't let them talk, then I think their mind is just going to wander. And we can't let them wander into that negative headspace in isolation.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that. One of the things, one of the silver linings that I'm finding about this time is that we are trying all sorts of new things and learning some things that we need to continue in the future. And I think that socio-emotional learning that you mentioned is one aspect that I hope that educators will be able to maintain well beyond this pandemic. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Charlotte, or excuse me, Elizabeth, or Kelly, anything you want to add to what Carly said there? I think what she said was beautiful, but if you have things that you'd like to add, please do.
I was just going to share too. It's good for kids to be together with other kids who get it. And then they realize, number one, I'm not the only one. And with morning meetings and those types of things, they can give each other ideas. And that's one of the things I love about my job. Like I get to do small groups with kids around a particular topic. And that's one of the most powerful things about it is kids get to hear what other kids are doing to manage all of this, because a lot of times we feel alone, especially now if you're spending the majority of your day at home, not being able to interact face to face. That time with those kids and hearing it in kid language can be so important, because again now it's not just me and my family, but it's my friends too, and so now we're all in this together and we can get through it together.
Indeed, thank you for that. One thing that comes to my mind, I have teenage boys, so it's a little bit different for them, but it's still difficult. And their life is drastically different than the way that it was um, 6 months ago, a year ago, 18 months ago, and there seems to be some new normal that we have to get used to all the time. So I don't want to downplay the difficulty that parents, teens, younger children that we're all experiencing. But one of the things I've been so grateful for in my household is that they have each other at least. How hard is this, Kelly, for kids who are only children? And what can we say to help them get through this time of crisis?
Wow. I don't know, I can't imagine being an only child right now, but um I can't speak from my own experience as an only child growing up. I was already doing a lot of imaginative play by myself because I had no choice. I was raised by my grandmother, and she didn't always have the energy to want to play. So I know for me, I spent a lot of time in imaginative play anyway. And so that was my world. So I can imagine a lot of my only childers. Oldest children who maybe there's a big gap between them and the next kid, they probably are spending a lot more time in imaginative play anyway. So I imagine a lot of that is probably going on right now in households all over the place. And my hope too is as the adults in those situations, we are finding ways to connect with our kids in other ways. Um, for example, one of the things I talk with my students about at school is even though we've been quarantined for so long, I bet you found things about quarantine that you like. I'm willing to bet you spent more time with your family now. Maybe y'all have pulled out the board games that you had never played before because you've always been on the electronics. So now maybe you're playing Monopoly, maybe you're playing Life, maybe you're playing Scrabble, maybe you're playing cards. Maybe you pulled out Uno, or maybe you're playing spades, or whatever it is that you and your family play. My hope is that as the adults, we're taking some initiative and making sure that our kids can still find ways to have fun, um, especially now that we can't formally be together as much as we'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Yay to all of that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. There's another clip that we want to watch. We want to see what happens after the boy recovers from this illness. So we're going to watch that next one. Go ahead with that one, Alex, if we can.
Why don't you sit right there, and I'll tuck this blanket around you, and you tell me what to pack in your suitcase for you. So long as they're the warm ones.
The rabbit! I have to pack the rabbit.
Why don't we leave the rabbit for later? In fact, you look strong enough to eat breakfast in the dining room this morning. What do you think? Well then, off you go. Oh! Slowly and carefully. Or I'll have to bring the tray up here.
No, please. I can do it. I'll go slowly.
Perhaps I can help.
I want to do it on my own. That's all right, isn't it?
Of course it is. You have to build your strength.
I've brought the suitcase, but the clothes.
No, none of it can go. We've purchased new ones for the trip. This whole room needs to be disinfected.
And the toys?
Toys, the bedding, the blankets, the books, anything he's played with must be burnt.
Everything.
The doctor insists it's the only way we can be sure he won't get sick again. Don't tell him about the rabbit. It'll be easier this way with the excitement of the seaside and all.
Yes.
Wow. Don't tell him about the rabbit. It'll be easier this way. Man, oh man, that is hard. So the boy has recovered from this extended illness, which everybody, the audience, as well as the other characters, are very excited about. They're relieved, of course. But the boy wants his rabbit. He's become his best friend. He plays pirates with him. He goes on treasure hunts with him. And now suddenly we learn the boy is better, but his rabbit must be burned. The doctor says it's the only way. I don't know about you, but when I first heard that, it was kind of a kick in the gut to me. Elizabeth, I want to come to you for a second and ask you, as a mom, is it ever tempting to shield your child from what you think might be a harsh truth?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And I would say, I guess, that I try not to, I mean, I never would deceive my children, but I also feel like I can definitely play the part of a filter sometimes, because there's some things that you just feel like you want them to feel safe. And if it's something that's going to make them feel unsafe, then I think it's definitely appropriate at times to filter things. Having said that, there are two big caveats. First of all, we were talking about the fear of the unknown. And if you're feeling something, kids will pick up on that. And so I think you have to talk to them about things that they're going to be exposed to anyway, that their little emotions are going to pick up on, because, not knowing about it, but knowing that something is wrong, I feel like can almost be scarier than if you just sit down and explain, well, this is what's happening, but this is why you're safe, and then also just your filter has to change. I feel like as they get older, what I would talk about with my 6-year-old is very different than the things I feel like I can discuss with my 12-year-old. And, you want them to feel safe, but you also want them to grow into these moral, compassionate people. And so you have to talk about the injustice and the scary things sometimes, and sort of help them work through it. And, that's a skill they need to learn as well.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that you both need and want your child to trust you. And with if you are constantly keeping everything from them, they're going to learn, even if they can't put it in those words, they're going to learn that maybe they can't trust you. Yeah.
Right.
I certainly don't want to imply that you are an untrustworthy parent, but can you think of an example of a time when you may have wanted to shield your child, so you didn't tell them everything, you left out some details, or you waited, a little long to say something? Can you think of a time when you might have done something like that?
I don't know. I mean, the past year has had a lot of opportunities for things like that. Maybe, I mean, like you were saying, not so much like deceiving them, but just feeling like maybe they don't need to know every single detail. I mean, if you just think about the very beginning of the pandemic, when even we didn't, know a lot of what was going on or what it was going to be like. You went to the grocery store and things were running low. Like, there were definitely times where it was a little bit kind of iffy and scary for even adults. So that would probably be a good example of when I just felt like there were times when they just didn't need to know every single, thing that was happening out there. But at the same time, still discussing it with them to a certain degree so that they wouldn't just feel this general fear and anxiety and not know exactly, kind of like what's going on out there. Why are all the adults in my life acting a little bit weird right now? Why is my school shutting down? But not sharing just every little detail maybe either.
That's a perfect example. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you're definitely not alone in that. Carly, I want to switch to you, kind of a similar question. Are there ever times when you, as a teacher, have to break bad news to your students? And if so, how do you do that?
Definitely. This past 12 months, I think for the country and the world has just been full of bad news. But I think that the people and children have proven to be quite resilient. And oftentimes that bad news that we hear today is going to lead to the constructive conversations that we can have tomorrow, like Elizabeth was saying. And when we deliver that bad news, I think we have to make that effort to go beyond just the what and be honest. Why is this happening? Why does it keep happening? And then how are we going to overcome it? How are we going to grow from it? How can we combat it? How can we start a change? Those good, honest conversations that we have with kids and even adults have so much power because they can literally reshape the way someone thinks. And when we reshape the way people think, we start to slowly change the world, like one person at a time. And there's a really big impact in that. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you can just talk honestly.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. It is a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for that. I want to move beyond the scenes of the show and just talk a little bit in general now about what's going on. Charlotte, I want to ask you a question, if you don't mind. What are some things that you can't do normally? You can't do things the same way that you used to before last March because of coronavirus. Can you think of a couple of things that maybe you have to do or you had to stop doing that's different from the way you used to before?
I don't really get to do like sleepovers or play dates or anything with my friends.
Yeah. I don't really get to do sleepovers and play dates with my friends either. And honestly, it's one of my favorite things to do with my best friends. And we can't really do that anymore. You're absolutely right. How does that make you feel? Is it kind of a no big deal, or do you really miss doing those things?
I really miss seeing my friends when I'm at their houses. I really miss seeing my friends.
Yeah.
It makes me feel sad.
I understand. And I'm really sorry that you have that things are happening that continue to happen that make you feel sad. I think all of us were thinking we'd have this thing under control by now. We can go back to some normalcy. And it really is sad that we haven't been able to do that yet. I want to ask all of you what school is like for you. Kelly, will you start off by telling us how you're doing elementary school in the Fort Mill School District?
Yeah, so we have a combination of two programs basically that we're offering. We're offering virtual for families who feel like that's, the route they wanted to take, and that's 100% virtual. And then we have face to face with those families who feel comfortable doing that. All of our teachers are working in the building, whether they are virtual teachers or face to face teachers. And we are doing our very best as far as social distancing. We're definitely requiring masks. Everybody's all in on washing their hands and sanitizing and those types of things. Posters up everywhere as far as, again, mask up. Every morning on our announcements, we remind the students that, we do this to keep everybody safe so that we don't have to have an extended break like we did in March. I think one of the things that the kids realized is that the break for e-learning from March to like May, it was great at first. And oh yay, we get to be out of school. But then they realize, oh, home is not the same. With school, you at least have different activities. Your teacher has things planned that help you grow academically, where parents aren't trained for that. And so I think a lot of kids realize that once they realize, oh, this is not going to be a 2-week vacation. And so a lot of kids remember that, and they know, okay, if we want to stay in school, we got to keep these masks up. I need to stay behind my cubicle. I need to stay 6 feet away. And so we're working them together. We call it a pleasant old family. We're working together as a family to keep everybody safe. And so we try to push that message and not so much focus on the losses as far as, not being able to be so close with our friends. Our classes can't mix and mingle on the playground anymore. You got to stay with your class. We don't do lunch in the cafeteria anymore. Lunches come to the classroom. So we've had to change up a lot of things in order to keep kids safe. Um, but our kids are so resilient. They have been tremendous as far as adapting to the things that we have to expect from them now. And I think Carly hit it right on the head. Those conversations with the different things that have been going on, kids, they, sometimes I think they should rule the world because they have so many ideas about how to fix things and make things right. That if we as the adults listened a little more, we could probably solve a lot of things pretty quickly.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Lots and lots of changes. One thing I'll note is that Fort Mill is a much smaller school district than CMS. In Fort Mill, there are, what, I think 8 elementary schools now.
We're 10, maybe 12.
Yeah, okay.
We opened 2 new elementary schools this year.
Fantastic. So 10 or 12 elementary schools, I think 5 middle schools and 3 high schools versus CMS that has 200 plus schools in the district. Carly, tell us what you are doing, how things are running at the elementary school in CMS.
We are currently all virtual, but it's been quite the tennis match. We've been back and forth. Parents had the options to send kids back to school, and they would either come Monday, Tuesday, or just Thursday, Friday, in a very small setting. I don't have any more than 4 in my room at a time, but we switched back to all virtual. So we're all on Zoom. A good majority of the day we're on Zoom, which is not a bad thing because, like Kelly said, they need to talk to each other. And for like those only children, like this might be the only time that they get to talk to somebody who is also 8 or 9 years old. So there's a lot of pluses to still being able to log in virtually, but we're slated to go back the 15th. So we'll have some kids virtual and some kids in person. So it's a juggling match when there's some in your classroom and some online, but it's fun. I'd rather have some in my classroom than none at all. So.
Kudos to the teachers and you guys are adapting. So you're slated to go back on the 15th of February? Mm-hmm. Okay, I did not realize that. Thank you so much for sharing. So Elizabeth and Charlotte, Charlotte's in a private school at Charlotte Country Day. How are things being run for kindergarten? And I don't know if it's safe to assume that the way they're doing kindergarten is the way that they're doing all of elementary schoolers. Tell us what school is like for you right now.
So Charlotte, of my 3 children, has really been the least affected, I feel like, because they are going every day. I mean, there are definitely changes. They go a short day on Wednesday just to give the teachers more planning. They're doing masks. The classes are also split in half so that they're in a small pod that they just stay with all day long. And then they can't go away to like specials. I think the blessing for Charlotte, though, is that since she is in kindergarten, this was her first year there. And so she doesn't really have anything to compare it to. Whereas my middle schooler, he's in person 2 or 3 days a week, depending. And I think it's been a huge adjustment for him because he knows what, life was like last year. And it's very different this year. And then my middle child was supposed to be in CMS. We just had a hard time in spring with the virtual and the being on the screen all the time, and so that's why I decided to homeschool her for the year. But it's like a day-by-day decision, and we'll see if CMS does go back, then we may look into doing that again. I'm just not really sure. It's like everything else, like everything is up in the air, and you never know what the next day is going to bring. So
it's very true. Best of luck to you. I know those are really difficult decisions to make, and with your kids being in different situations, it's hard to make a decision for one of them that will be positive for everybody and vice versa. So thank you for sharing. I want to ask a question about everybody, I think, brought up devices or being on Zoom. All of us really are having to spend more time on devices than ever before, and not by choice. A lot of times we have to for work or for school, and even just to socialize. I mean, I talk on the phone a lot more. I'm doing FaceTime a lot more, and sometimes even Zooming for personal reasons. Kelly, I want to ask, is there any fear that we can be over Zoomed? Are we like tapped out on screen time these days?
Yeah, of course, that's always a fear because, again, we're spending way more time on tech than ever before. But this time it's out of necessity. Whereas before it was for, entertainment or that type of thing. But now we have no choice, especially with a lot of schools being virtual. Um, with that, one of the things that I always preach just in life is finding that balance, making sure that at this point, kids can't necessarily stick to the recommendation. I believe the recommendation is like 2 hours or less of screen time a day. Well, that is not going to happen if they're in a virtual setting for school. So we got to do what we got to do, right? So with that, making sure as the adults, we make them log off for a while, go outside and play. Well, it's cold right now, so maybe you do some things inside to encourage movement and that type of thing. I know my family has pulled out the Wii that we had gave up a long time ago, but we pulled out the Wii and we are just dancing these days as a way to get moving since we're not outside as much. But again, once it gets warm, go outside and play. And again, use that imagination, make up games, play with bubbles, sidewalk chalk, those types of things. And that's going to promote that balance of not being on the screen all day long. But again, as parents, we have to push that because a lot of the kids aren't going to choose that because of, Roblox and Minecraft and all those fun things, Among Us and all those things that are, fun online. But we have to model it too. When we tell them to get off, we got to get off too, which, whew, that can be hard. But we got to be the model for them. So again, finding the balance with ourselves as the adults, but also modeling that for our kids and finding it for them too.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Kelly, and Carly or Elizabeth, if you have ideas on this next question, I hope that you'll chime in as well. What signals can parents look for as an indication that maybe their child needs a break from technology? Are there habits or tendencies that we can look for to say, oh, this is something I should be paying attention to?
We started our year with those morning meetings, like I mentioned before, and it has created such a space where a child will honestly chat me and say, Ms. Spears, I have a lot of anxiety today, or I do not feel well today. Or their parent will send me a message and say, so and so's not going to log in today. And I'm like, you do what you need to do. Like, we're all, my boss said, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So you have to handle them all differently. They're all different. They all have different needs. So listen to those and get to know them. And when you get to know them, you'll know when they've had their limit, when they truly need a break.
Yeah, that's really sound advice. For the past few weeks, I have been logging on to class with students at a local high school and just talking with them about various careers in theater. And more than once, some of the students have said, like, really, in essence, I just can't today.
Mhm.
Friend, I understand. Sometimes I just can't either. I mentioned earlier too that I have two teenage boys, and my youngest is the more outgoing of the two. He's more social, and he plays multiple sports, and things just have not been typical for him. And I noticed a couple weeks ago that he was choosing to stay indoors a lot more. And Miss Lewis knows both of my children, so she probably knows this is not like him at all. And I would say, hey, do you want to do X, Y, and Z? And he'd always say no. Or I'd say, hey, why don't you call this friend and ask him if he, wants to meet you at the basketball court? Just thinking of anything to get him outdoors. And his attitude was just no. It was always no, no, no. And so I stopped giving the option and I put together like a series of things that we could all do together as a family. One, to get outside to give us some fresh air, and two, to get our bodies moving and get those, endorphins flowing that he's used to. And I noticed after a few days of that, he kind of returned to his normal excitement just about life in general and looking forward to things. But it was honestly really scary when I started to see his demeanor change so much. And I'm sure I'm not alone in parents seeing that happen to their kids. Alrighty, well, we're just about ready to wrap up. But I want to ask one last question, and I also want you to share freely as much as you would like. My last question is posed to all of you. At the end of the show, you guys got to see the whole thing. But at the end of the show, we know that the boy gets a new stuffed toy rabbit. His old Velveteen Rabbit does indeed have to be burned. He gets this new rabbit, and we see him with that toy from far off. And it appears that he's made a connection with this new toy, just like he had with his original Velveteen Rabbit. A couple of you have said that humans are resilient, and it's true. And it's one of the beautiful things that we get to witness in kids often. What are some things that you as individuals are doing to adjust to our new normal? What are some silver linings that you are getting to find?
I know in class, so as an elementary school counselor, I get to go into classes every other week for 30 minutes, and we talk life skills. We talk real life stuff, as I like to tell them. And one of the things that we've discussed is how quarantine and the pandemic has made us all be more creative. I use the example of Halloween. We brainstormed all the different ways that kids received Halloween candy in a safe way, whether it was the candy falling down the chute, whether it was the neighbors that glued it to sticks and put it in the yard, whether people were giving it out with long handled spoons. Like, people have been so creative about how we can do things and still stay safe. And it's that's a testament to the power of, again, resilience and creativity. Um, and those kinds of things are important. Again, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for our ingenuity, which can be important these days. And again, the imagination of our kids, them making up games and
Yeah,
us meeting them in their world and just playing with them. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Halloween was interesting, wasn't it? Thank you so
yeah.
much, Kelly. Yeah.
Baby
Anybody else?
showers, birthday party, parades.
Right. Yeah.
Who knew? I've not seen
Who
so many
knew?
parades ever.
And they're so fun, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else want to share?
I think it's also given people that chance to practice little gratitude. You know, the things that we took for granted at one time, just walking outside with a bare face. You know, like when you get to do that in a park now, you're like, oh, this is so great. Like, you know, you appreciate it so much more. And, you know, being able to hug someone, you know, all of that is it feels so nice these days, and I think that everyone has gained greater appreciation for just the little things.
It's so true. You're absolutely right. There are lots of things that we clearly took for granted before. Yeah. Charlotte, Elizabeth, anything that you want to share with us about how you're adjusting to the new normal, or some new thing that you've tried during quarantine?
Yeah, we're just trying to be creative like everyone else. We've had a ton of family game nights. We recently discovered the Ann Springs Close Greenway down in Fort Mill, and so we've been going there a lot to get the kids out, and you can really space out there and feel safe, and it's like a good way to, you know, be outside but not be so restricted like you are in so many public places now. But yeah, I mean, I never in a million years would have thought I would have homeschooled one of my children, but you know, I think a lot about the fact that I'm going to actually be really sad. Like the day when she goes back to school, that's going to be a sad day for me. And I'll probably always look back on this year and think, wow, that was a really great year I got to have with her and, you know, our whole family together. So
Yeah, I'll bet that will be difficult. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you are able to give her the time that she needs. That's really important. I want to say to all of you, to Carly, Elizabeth, Charlotte, Kelly, thank you all so very much. Your contributions to this conversation have been absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure that our audience would agree with me. So thank you very much, really, for being here. Um, I want to say to our virtual audience, if you have not seen The Velveteen Rabbit, it truly is a beautiful show, and it's available for streaming through Broadway on Demand through March 31st. Just go to our website at ctcharlotte.org, click on shows and tickets, and there's a link to purchase your pass for viewing. It is the first of 4 shows that we are doing this season. We can't be in our building. We cannot have a live audience. So we are doing 4 shows that are all available virtually. So we hope you'll join us for those. And if you have already seen the show, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate our audience for being patient with us and continuing to engage with us in a virtual way. We have our fingers crossed that in the fall, we'll be able to go back to a little bit of normalcy. Thank you all again for joining me on the panel. Thank you for joining in virtually, and we will see you again soon. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Bye-bye.